Hello, listeners. It's been a long time. I've missed you. Have you missed me? I hope so. I hope that you're enjoying your 4th of July weekend. I know I am. I know I said that we wouldn't be seeing each other until the fall. I just couldn't stay away. So I have for you a brand new tale to your delight. So sit back, get comfortable, because you're in for a hell of a ride. The Haunting of Melrose Hall. Are you superstitious? Do you believe in ghosts? Well, whether you do or you don't, there are hundreds, hell, even thousands of people living in the Flatbush district of Brooklyn who do, and who will tell you there's no doubt at all about the existence of the ghost of Melrose Hall. Melrose Hall is a residence at Bedford Avenue and Winthorpe Street, Flatbush. The particular spirit which it is said to harbor is that of an Indian girl who died there 118 years ago. At every change in the ownership of the historic home, and on every occasion when there is dancing in the hall, the ghost stalks forth. She was last seen 2 years ago while a ball was in progress. She opened a secret panel which formerly led to a blind staircase in what is now the dining room and was the library in former times, and glided out among the other dancers. Some of the guests saw her, others were skeptical. The alleged apparition caused gossip at the time. Since the last change in ownership, the ghost has not been seen. But one unusual circumstance has been noted. On the inside of the heavy front door, a copper key hangs on the immense old-fashioned lock. This key is about 8 inches long, of well-burnished metal, and weighs something like 1/4 of a pound. The door is of heavy timber, studded with nails. It is made in 2 sections, dividing in the middle. Suddenly, in the middle of the forenoon, the key turned on the lock, and both the top and bottom sections of the door swung back, creaking. The floor cracked as if someone had stepped over the threshold, but no one was to be seen. No one within the house touched the key, and as it hung within the door, it could not have been reached from the outside. Melrose Hall's ghost dates to the days of the American Revolution, when the house was owned by Colonel William Axtell. Although a reputation for haunting has clung to the neighborhood ever since, the romantic incident which gave rise to it has been forgotten. Here and there, an antiquary knows it. Colonel Axtell was a member of the King's Council and a famous Tory. The ancestor from whom he had his name was a soldier in Cromwell's army and was beheaded afterward by order of Charles II. Colonel Axtell was a very rich man, and he owned many, many slaves. He lived the life of most New York Tories, toasted King George at wine suppers, discharged the duties of a counselor with pomp, and drove hounds for recreation. At the outbreak of the Revolutionary War, Melrose Hall became a rendezvous for royalists. The Americans made every effort to capture Colonel Axtell. In a close pursuit, on one occasion, he was rescued by an Indian girl. She was a princess, as Iroquois titles go, comely and good to look upon. The colonel named her Isabella and fell madly in love with her. He was a handsome man, a dashing Englishman, and Isabella promptly fell in love with him as well. Affairs were complicated by the fact that there was already Mrs. Axtell, but she was a cold, haughty woman with some scorn for their neighbors and no liking for Colonel life. Colonel Axtell brought the beautiful Isabella home secretly and put her in charge of an elderly slave. This devoted slave set her wits to work to conceal the girl. Melrose Hall was then, as now, a great rambling old place, abounding in secret panels and hidden chambers and staircases. The south wing of the house consisted of an immense ballroom with apartments above. Directly over the ballroom was a window. From the outside this looked right enough. On the inside, however, the apartment showed a blank wall. The window opened into a secret chamber. To this, there was no means of ingress except by the outside window. In this secret chamber, the old slave hid the Indian girl Isabella. She carried food to her every single day and ministered to her wants. Under cover of darkness, Colonel Axtell used to mount a ladder to visit his Indian princess. Sometimes, Isabella was led into the library in the evening when the house was quiet, and she and the colonel sat peacefully before the fire. At any alarm, they opened a secret panel in the wainscot. This led to a hidden staircase, which opened upon an outside window, and the girl could easily escape. You can see the panel and the staircase to this very day. Their romance came to an abrupt end when Colonel Axtell received a commission in the British Army from Sir William Howe in 1778. He went away to war for almost a year, and Isabella was left in charge of the slaves. When he came back, although on the losing side, he was the hero of the hour among New York Tories. A ball was arranged to celebrate his homecoming. Melrose Hall was lighted brilliantly, and the assembly was very gay. At the first opportunity, Colonel Axel escaped from his guests and ran toward the slave quarters.
"Where is my mammy Rachel?"
he shouted, calling for the old woman who tended Isabella.
Dead 6 weeks ago, master,
said the slaves. And then they informed the colonel how in the delirium of her illness, the old woman had been possessed of a strange hallucination. She babbled of an Indian girl whom she believed to be starving to death in the big house. Colonel Axel came reeling from the servants' quarters. He raved and raved like a madman as he approached the hall. The lights all over the house went out. The ballroom was left in pure darkness. As he entered, the sight met with his fixing gaze, which froze the terrified man to the spot. In the midst of the gaiety and the dancing, the light had been replaced by a sickly, glowworm light shone on every object in the room. Low and unearthly noises were heard all throughout the house, then died away, mingling with the sigh of the wind through the tall pines. Suddenly, the secret passage opened, and the spectral form of Isabella had appeared. The face was ashen pale, each vein strongly defined on the thin features. Her long black hair hung, drooping over her shoulders to the floor, and she seemed clad in airy gossamer. The apparition bore the look of unnatural sorrow, and the hands were clenched in an attitude of woe. Noiselessly, she glided through the hall, her sightless eyeballs bent on the petrified form of the colonel, while the lips moved in a ghastly smile as the bony hand pointed to the trembling wife. Nearing the entrance to the secret stairs, she turned and with her finger wrote the word betrayer, then vanished into thin air. The dismal light gradually faded and glimmered out, leaving everything shrouded in darkness. For a moment, all was still. Then an agonizing shriek through the hall, accompanied by the heavy thud, as if a body had fallen. The fearful sound was echoed by the frantic slaves and the howl of the dogs, as the wind blew the windows open and swept through the room. Again the strange glow appeared, lingering just long enough to illuminate the prostrate figure of the colonel lying before the secret entrance, and the spectral woman bending over him with the same heartless smile upon her lips, pointing to a bleeding wound near his heart, which the maddened man had inflicted with his own sword As the bell tolled the midnight hour, the light died out, and the specter once more vanished. When lights were brought, every attempt was made to save the colonel's life, but he only lived a few hours, and his last entreaties were to have the house sold and his family return immediately to England. Later, after considerable excavation, Isabella's skeleton was found in the chamber over the ballroom. Many persons have claimed a sight of the ghost in the years since then. At that time, some old walled-up cellars under the house were unearthed. In these were several human skeletons. There were iron posts and chains also, by which it was believed slaves were once secured and punished. The bones might have been those of Tory officers who were secreted about the hall in Colonel Axtell's day. Although the house was pulled down in 1903, it remains one of the most haunted houses in American history. Well, listeners, I do hope you've enjoyed this tale. It had all the right ingredients that I love to feast on: horror, love, and betrayal. If you haven't yet, make sure to go follow us on Instagram, Eerie Tales from the Darkness Podcast, all one word, or search for us on Facebook, Eerie Tales from the Darkness, and make sure to click that subscribe button if you haven't already. We are pleased to see those of you who have chose to follow us, but we would certainly like to see more of you. Don't forget to tell others to subscribe. And if you like the podcast, make sure to support it for just $1 a month so we can continue to have some more fun. Thank you once again. I hope you've enjoyed your time here. Happy 4th of July, listeners.